Assalamualaikum everyone. Today I would like to continue with the next subtopic under sale of goods, which is under transfer of property in goods. As I mentioned during our last lecture, property in goods means the ownership of the goods. Right? So for today's lessons, we are going to learn in what way the property in goods may be transferred from the seller to buyer, how the process will take place. Please bear in mind that the rules on transfer of property in goods or rules of transfer of ownership is very important, okay, because to determine the risk of damage. Okay, for example, what if the goods in the process of transmission from the seller to buyer, and then let's say the goods is missing, so who is liable to bear the loss here? Is the seller or buyer? We need to ascertain this, okay, because in the end of the negotiation we are going to find, okay, who will be liable to pay the compensation. That's why this rule is very important. Right, so the learning outcomes for today is that at the end of the lessons, you are able to distinguish between the concept of property, ownership, and that of possession. Second, you are able to discuss the methods on how to transfer of property in goods in order to determine the risk. Alright, now let's start. Okay, the first thing that you must bear in mind is that transfer of property in goods and transfer of title is a difference. Okay, because under transfer of property in goods, meaning that this is a transfer of ownership. Transfer of title is to determine whether the sale made by the seller is valid or not. Okay, and then we must distinguish between the concept of property, which is the ownership, and that of possession. When you have the possessions of the goods, it doesn't mean that you are the owner of the goods. That's why if you just possess the goods is in your possession, you cannot transfer, you cannot sell the goods to other person. However, if you are the ownership, you have the ownership of the goods, and now you are the owner, you have right to make the sale, you have right to dispose the goods. Okay, the passing of property in goods does not necessarily mean that possession also pass with it, and vice versa, meaning to say that even the ownership already passed to the buyer, but the possession may be remain with the seller. In relation to sale of goods, it is important to ascertain when the property in goods pass to the buyer. Okay, this is very important. We need to determine when the property in goods pass to the buyer. This is because of the legal consequences of the passing of property. Before property pass to the buyer, the goods remain at the seller's risk. When property pass to the buyer, the goods are at the buyer's risk irrespective of whether the goods have been actually delivered to the buyer or not. This is based on section 26. Section 26 is important because this is the general rule of transfer of property in goods. Right, based on this provision, res prima facie pass with property unless otherwise agreed. The goods remain at the seller's risk until the property therein is transferred to the buyer, but when the property therein is transferred to the buyer, the goods are at the buyer's risk whether delivery being made or not. It doesn't matter if the buyer have received the goods or not, as long as there is a transfer of property in goods. meaning the buyer will bear the risk. Okay. Before the transfer of property in goods transfer to the buyer, the risk will be borne by the seller. That's why it is important, it is very crucial for us to determine when is the time that the ownership was transferred to buyer. In short, based on section 26, unless agreed otherwise, risk is borne by the owner regardless of either he is in possession or not. Okay, there are two types of goods as you learned in our previous lectures. First is uncertain goods. Uncertain goods meaning that the goods that has not been ascertained yet, okay, at the time the contract was made. This is not you will ascertain the goods, you will determine the goods in future. So in this case, in the case of a contract of sale of uncertain goods, the property in goods can only be transferred. Okay, take note. The property in goods can only be transferred to the buyer after they are ascertained. After they are ascertained. So before the goods becomes ascertained, the one who will bear the risk is the seller, not the buyer. For example, if contract to buy a new motorcycle from the earliest possible consignment of Charisma motorcycles manufactured by Modenas, the property in the motorcycle, here is referring to the ownership of the motorcycle, does not pass until the seller has set the motorcycle for Mahmud. In other words, until the seller ascertains which a Charisma motorcycle would be sold to Mahmud. Okay, so according to the case of reweight, the court held that the goods were unascertained and not yet appropriated to the contract, and the property in goods had not passed to buyer. Okay, so if there is no ascertainment of the goods, meaning that the ownership still remain with the seller. Based on the second type of goods, known as ascertained goods, this is where a sale of specific or ascertained goods. You already determine the goods at the time you enter into the contract. So the property in them, meaning the ownership of the goods, is transferred to the buyer at such time as the parties to the contract intend it to be transferred, meaning it is based on the intention of the parties. But how to ascertain the intention? Based on section 19 subsection 1, intention may be ascertained based on first the terms of the contract. We refer to the terms and condition made between seller and buyer. Second, based on the conduct of the parties. Third, based on the circumstances of the case. But this is still unclear. Okay, we do not know. Okay, what are the conduct of the parties? What are the circumstances of the case? And therefore, Section 22 to Section 24 of the Sale of Goods Act provide the rules of ascertaining the intention. These rules are important in order to ascertain the intention of the parties as to the time at which the property in the goods is to pass to the buyer. Okay, so we will use these rules based on section 22 to section 24 of the Act. These rules are important in order to ascertain the intention as to the time at which the ownership is to pass to the buyer. Okay. Alright, first, in section 20 of the Act, where there is an unconditional contract for the sale of specific goods in deliverable state. Take note, this is for unconditional contract. Sale of specific goods in a deliverable state. The property in goods here refer to ownership pass to the buyer when the contract is made. When the contract is made means that at the time the contract is made. So it doesn't matter, okay, the time of payment, time of delivery, okay, is postponed. Okay, the most important thing for section 20 is when the contract is made. What is a deliverable state? Deliverable state means where is nothing else to be done by the seller on the goods for the buyer. The goods are in such state that the buyer will under the contract be bound to take delivery of them, meaning that this is a complete goods. Goods is ready to be sold to the buyer. For example, Ben agrees to buy Joe's bicycle and Joe agreed that Ben will pay him next month. The property in the goods pass immediately to Ben even though Ben has not paid for it yet. Even there is no payment yet, even there is no delivery of the goods yet. Okay, but at the time they entered into the agreements, the ownership already passed from the seller to buyer. So this is under the first rule, section 20. Okay, next we continue with the second rule.